think if you are going to take what we are talking about in this video and you are going to contemplate on it and take it into your meditative practice, I think it's of great value and of great help to determine what's next for you on your spiritual journey, because you will know where you are standing, where you are at, and what you have to work on. And basically this video is about who you are during your spiritual path, and that means what you are identifying with in your spiritual path, in your spiritual progress. And that means, what do you feel is the core of your being? What do you feel is solid? What is real? What is the you? And while the spiritual path is about showing you what your true self is, it is also at the same time about deconstructing the false self. It's about letting go of dissolving solidity and dissolving the egoic identification with the things we are going to mention and we are going to talk about. And while this is largely influenced by my own personal experience, you will probably see many similarities to your own path or to other teachings, because while it's also a personal journey, there's an overarching similarity between different people on the path, between different stages of waking up and the paths that lead to those insights and the paths that lead to ultimately enlightenment. And we are going to start with the most broad description of ego identification. And while you are listening to this video, you have to know that every layer also includes identification with the succeeding layers. So what I mentioned first, maybe you're not identified with that anymore, but the layers after that. And if you're identified with that first layer I mentioned, it's also very likely that you are still identified with the other layers. So I go from the most asleep state to the most awake state. So that means from the deepest ego identification to the most subtle. And the deepest ego identification, people that are at this stage probably have never heard of spirituality, and they maybe have heard of it, but they have never used the practices to work on dissolving those identifications. And on that layer, you are not only your physical body, you are not only identified with your thoughts and your body, but you are also identified very strongly with the relationships you have to your surrounding environment, and especially to other people. In that state, it feels like there is some solid reality to relationships, that they are actually something real, tangible. And if you contemplate relationships, you will see that they are actually only a mental construct. What there actually is memories you have of the interactions with other people, and from time to time the real experience of interacting with other people. So relationships and how you present yourself in the world has no fundamental solidity. But at that stage you are still very much identified with being a person relating to other people, and you are very much concerned with how you present yourself, and you think a lot about how other people perceive the person that you play, the role that you play, and you are usually not aware of that. And if you are spiritually contemplating and meditating for a while, you might think that you are no longer identified with that. But really, in my experience, you can spend years in meditation disidentifying from all of those relationships, from all of those concepts, because they are very strong. They come up a lot, and you may have had an experience with someone, and during your meditation you are thinking about that, and you are struggling with that. It makes you suffer to a certain degree, because you are thinking that part of yourself is that relationship, and if something goes wrong with that relationship, that's part of yourself is to blame and is going to suffer for it. And really, to test if you're completely disidentified and have transcended this stage is to think about a relationship that's very important to you and imagine it would stop. Not because maybe the person has died or has died, but because this person, you have just decided to take them out of your life. And if that makes you suffer, even the thought of that, and you think, oh my God, that would be like really bad, there is a strong identification. That's a sign you are not equanimous with whatever happens to that concept of your relationship. That's because part of yourself is that relationship. So really the goal here is to work through all of your identifications with relationships and we have now basically talked only about relationships to people, but that also includes on an even more gross level the identification with our relationship to other objects. So some people even define part of their selves through the house they live in or the car they drive, and those are obviously also problematic. But to work out and to really, really become equanimous with all of these things is to contemplate those relationships in meditation. And that means you are sitting there in silence, and whenever something of that sort comes up, you disidentify from it. You are no longer concerned with it. So you think to yourself, while you are inquiring maybe who you are clearly seeing that concept is coming up. And it cannot be you, because it's the object. It's not the subject that you are looking for. So it's not you. And over again, those thoughts will come up and those concepts, and you just see them for what they are and you discard them. You say, no, that is an object of experience, that's not me. And you might have to do that for years, as I already explained, because there are so many of those relationships. Okay, and the next level that people that are coming to the spiritual paths and teachings are still very much attached to is they think they are the body. So it is like, yeah, of course, I'm a human being, and maybe I have heard that in the truest sense I'm not a human being. Be honest, if you only have that as a knowledge in your mind, or if you have truly disidentified from your body, and if you are totally fine with whatever happens to your physical body, because if you have disidentified from it, you wouldn't suffer. For example, that would mean there is pain in your body. That happens to all of us. Imagine, or maybe remember a time when you were in physical pain. And if you are truly disidentified from your body, you are no longer suffering. There is the pain, but there is no resistance. There is only the experience in awareness of pain. So the truest or the best judge of if you are still at that stage of being identified with the body is the question, am I suffering when I feel pain? Or is pain just like any other experience? Because the suffering only comes when you think that it's you who is suffering, that there is actually something bad going to happen to you, because this pain is showing you in some sense that you are mortal, that the body is going to die, and you resist pain therefore. And in the same way as with the identification with relationships, if you want to disidentify from being the body, you also sit there in meditation and you observe the body, pain, anything that you feel as your body and perceive as your body. You see it as an object, as not you. And while that may be very obvious if it's pointed out to you, there are many subtle identifications there, and you will have to work through them. And this takes work, and really feel into like the different parts of your body and think about, really, am I identified with that area? And the hardest part to disidentify from is being the mental thinker that is somewhere located behind the eyes. That is this entity that's somehow controlling your physical body. And it's more difficult to identify really from that place of being here in your physical body. But it's possible, and through repeated meditation on your physical body, you will be able to disidentify from that. And the third level that is really difficult for most people to disidentify from, and where people get oftentimes stuck on the spiritual path, is the identification with thought. And while it's pointed out in many, many teachings, and very often pointed out that you are not your thought, that you are not the thinker, it is so subtle, and the awareness is attaching itself to thought very, very quickly. And you have to be very mindful of how this process works, and really become clear in meditation over and over again that you are observing thoughts, and that thoughts are just another thing arising in experience, because you can obviously observe them while they are arising. And you will see that in meditation over and over again. They will come up, thoughts, you will see them, and you will say, that is not me, and you will let go of them. This is different from the previous stages and the stage of disidentifying from relationship, because there it's about the content of the thoughts, where you are still very much identified with the content of the thought. But here it's actually being the thinker, being identified with the driving force somehow behind your thoughts. And you think you're really that, the person who thinks. And then even, and again here it's the same as with the previous stages, the way you disidentify from it is just again and again, over and over again, seeing the thoughts as the object of your experience and just letting go of them, dissolving any sense of solidity within them. And then the next stage, that is very subtle, again even subtler, is the feeling of being the receiver of your experience. So as it's clear that you are not the objects that you are seeing, as it's clear that you are not the person, that you are not the things that you are hearing, it is difficult to not feel to be the entity that's receiving the sounds, the sights, the touches, the smells, the tastes. It's at that stage that you are identified with the process of these sensations coming through you somehow, because it feels like you can consciously direct your attention, and somewhere in that process of directing attention, that's who you are. That's how you feel you come to be. And it's even more difficult to objectify that even, but it's still an object of experience to be the receiver of those experiences. And then you observe just this process of hearing again, of hearing in meditation, for example, because if you have your eyes closed, you see relatively little, but you can still hear things going on around you, and you will try to find in that very moment of hearing to identify the you. And you will have to let go of that too. But then the next stage where many people think they have woken up and have become enlightened is when they have in experience dissolved every identification. It somehow becomes very clear that they are just awareness or consciousness, that they are just the empty space in which everything arises. And that's very, very difficult to describe because words are contradicting here. Because awareness, what is that? What is that? What's the substance of awareness? What could you identify with? It's very hard to say, but still there's a feeling of somehow being, of being awareness. But you have to, again, watch awareness. What is aware of awareness, so to speak? What is awareness? If you still feel that there's somehow something real, tangible to awareness. Because the problem is awareness is nothing. It's just another concept of that brought you to this place of having disidentified from all other content of experience. But still awareness is just an experience. You are just aware. And really the substance of awareness and of everything is nothingness. And the final step then is to dissolve any identification with awareness, with being the aware, conscious experiencer of everything. Because there is still like a subtlety that's very, very difficult and sneaky, and it's holding you back from real enlightenment, where everything is seen, including the the awareness, as being nothing, as being just arising simultaneously with the objects of experience, with everything, with in the thought, in the sound, in the sight. And it's so clear, it's so ultimately nothing that it's unable to be identified. It's unable to provide any solidity. And it feels just like falling, 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 forever. Every moment is falling. Because there is nothing to it. And in this falling you will discover that it's like a floating. It's momentary awareness presenting itself with its infinite picture that's going on in every moment. It just is, and it's no theory, it's no explanation, it's no single identifiable thing. It's not even awareness, and that's the hardest part. So I hope this description of what it is that you identify with along the path to spiritual awakening is helpful to you. And it's really about dissolving all identification, all feelings of solidity, and all areas of resistance. That's how I can also describe it. And when you go through that process, it's terrifying at times because it feels like you are somehow losing yourself, your motivation maybe. But they are all tied to this false sense of self, to this illusory ego identification that you have believed in, or that you are believing in. And don't confuse this with experience stopping or not going on anymore, because there is really no interference of nothingness with the story that's unfolding. It's just you have completely removed any resistance. And while I'm doing these videos, for example, there's just no me in speaking, no me in doing anything anymore. It's just what's going on, you could say. It's just not going on also. It's just appearing, and it's self-aware. And it's just coming and going and flowing and being. And so that's what I wanted to share today. I hope it was helpful. Please really share with me your own personal insights that are maybe relevant to this model, to this description. And if I have maybe missed some major identification that was relevant for you on your path, or you're maybe currently stuck at, just please share it with me. Give the video a thumbs up and share it if you find it could be helpful to someone. And yeah, if you want some help along your personal journey, feel free to write me a message through my blog post. We can have a conversation to check if my coaching would be helpful to you and is a fit. And yeah, we can go from there then. With that, thank you for watching and see you in the next video. Bye.